Happy Wednesday. Hashtag my global family. This is Drea Beta, pastor of Coyotes Lodge, House of Spirituality, Critical Theory, and Medical Marijuana. Thank you so much for joining me on this glorious day. How is your week going, family? I hope it is going well. I'm nervous, family. Is that strange? I love our community so much. But it's been a while. It has been about 4 weeks, family, since we have met as a spiritual community. And I do apologize for that. I was down for a week or two with the COVID reaction to the second vaccine shot. Thank goodness for being fully vaccinated, family, and for my family also to be fully vaccinated at this time. But I'll be honest, family, I was having a struggle. I was struggling as a human person to find worth in myself. That might sound crazy, but I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. I felt like I was drowning, family. And I had to take a step back and I had to really figure out what my priorities were. And if I wanted to be a martyr to all of my million causes and therefore be ineffective, or if I had to take a step back and decide that me as a person deserved to have a life, to have a family, and to have a weekend, family. Which is why we have moved our spiritual community service night to Wednesdays instead of Sundays. So thank you, family, and I am so ever grateful to be part of your adventure, which is what we call life. So let's go ahead and get started. And to review, family, do not forget that this is a house of spirituality. And we are here to reflect through critical theory, of which our readings come from, right? So our readings do not come from a book of faith. Rather, we walk the path that our ancestors created, family, and we take care of our soul by literally talking to our ancestors. So when you hear me pray, family, I'm calling on my Gammy, my Papa, my great Papa, and all of the brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles, blood and related, family, who love this coyote and made sure that I knew it. So join me, family, in finding ways to take care of your mind, body, and spirit. And don't forget, family, we are also the House of Medical Marijuana, which means, family, that you yourself do not have to partake of my medication and the medication that millions around the world find helpful, from anything from diagnoses like myself with PTSD as a survivor 3 times over, family, and also for various diagnoses. So, family, what we ask here in the House of Spirituality, Critical Theory, Medical Marijuana is that you keep an open mind on ways that we can heal our bodies and spirits and minds. So medical marijuana literally comes from the earth, family, and traditions all around the world have used traditional medicines in order to heal our souls. So, family, I do not ask that you actually partake of it. If you would like to try it, please go to a medical professional, or if you're in a state where it's recreational, please abide by all of the regulations and stay legal, family, and stay safe, because it is a medication, which also means that you will have to start out with small doses and work with a professional to help you get the medication that you need. All right, family, I'm long-winded today, but I'm nervous. Family, you made me nervous. And there's not many things in this world that make this coyote nervous, but you did it. So let's go ahead and reconnect to our spirituality, family, and offer up prayer. All of our cultures around the world, family, have some form of cleansing their minds, bodies, spirits, and spaces. And at this moment, I am going to use my ancestors' ceremony of smudging and offer up this sage when I offer up my prayer. And I'm a child of modernity, family, because it is 2021. And so I'm taking my contraption here, my fire, And please be safe, family. Do not burn down your house or stay safe. Fire extinguishers are a must. Sorry, Gammy, I had to do my disclaimer. Dear Gammy, Papa, great-grandpa, and all of our ancestors, please cleanse this space around my family and myself, because I've been carrying around some negative energy, Gammy. I'll be honest. And I need to shake it off, and I need to fill my heart with love. And take this moment to talk to you, to talk with my family, and to prepare myself for the battles ahead. Because, family, we are having many battles ahead. And I would like for you to reflect both on our loss over the last year and a half during this COVID pandemic, but also of the things that we have gained, the friendships that we have earned, the family that have nurtured us and supported us. Dear Gammy, it's your favorite coyote. I love you. I know. It's been like 2 hours. But I missed you, and I could have used some of your wisdom today. Because I was fierce when I should have been patient. And, my temper can get the better of me sometimes. So, Gammy, can you please send me some patience? Because I think I need it. But I know that we're going to compromise and come to a solution, and that everyone will feel like they're honored and respected. Dear Papa, I love you and I miss you. How's it going up there? I think of you in your lazy boy chair with your newspaper and your cup of coffee. And I miss you. And I love you. Just thought you should know. Dear great-great-grandpa, Pablo Abeda. Dear sir, I think we're a little a mess right now. Can you please send our leaders and institutions some guidance? As we face the real battles of human life, as we talk about poverty rates and job losses, and as people are faced with hope in their hearts to overcome all of these battles and survive and thrive, just help us remember that when we look around in our communities, every person, regardless of class, regardless of race, regardless of sexuality, regardless of gender, is a human person worthy of love and respect and dignity. And that we as a human society, as a nation on this planet, literally united by the idea of surviving together. Help us have patience with each other so that we can recover the loss of human dignity. Help us to heal our hearts because they feel wounded and we need strength. Every day we need some strength. So please send us that strength so we could do honor to the sacrifices that you made so we'd literally be here today. I know, Gammy, I know all of that work you took and all those mortgage payments you made so that our family would have a roof over their heads. And I know all those long nights my papa worked to make sure my Gammy could go spend his money sometimes. Thank you, Papa. But we brought you popcorn and we went to movies and we had fried chicken, so we loved you too. But just help us all remember how to love each other. All right, family, we are going to, excuse me, I was getting a little emotional. But that's okay, family, because having emotions means we're human people. We're human beings. And we feel. When we don't feel anymore, that's when we should be worried. As the house of medical marijuana, I'm going to partake of my medication at this time. And I would like for you to reflect today, family, as we talk about the current lived realities, the current lived experiences of Americans and peoples whose bodies are visibly marked as different when they walk through the world, the consequences of those realities. As we reflect on those today, please join me in thanking for the privileges that we do have and for reflecting on the hardships that we've had to overcome. Because those hardships have made us stronger and they have made us powerful. And we will draw from those experiences. And what drives our work is to ensure that our children and our children's children will someday stop these patterns of trauma and will someday thrive in a land that calls itself the land of the free. Let us make that a reality, family. Whew. Today's first reading, family. Me my allergies as well. Allergies. Today's first reading today, family, comes from a text that is near and dear to my heart, The New Jim Crow by Alexander. This text, everyone should read this text, family. And in this house of spirituality, I'm asking us to reflect on the lived experiences of people who may not look like us, who may not speak our language, who may not be from the same country we are, who may not even be. You might think of someone who's the furthest from you, and I'm asking you for this one moment, family, to put yourself in their shoes. To think of each person that we are going to talk about in today's readings. I want you to think about them as a human life with value. I don't want you to think of them as a statistic, but I want you to think of them as someone's daughter or someone's father or someone's brother. Once again, vagrancy laws and other laws defining activities such as mischief and insulting gestures as crimes were enforced vigorously against blacks. The aggressive enforcement of these criminal offenses opened up enormous markets for convict leasing, in which prisoners were contracted out as laborers to the highest bidder. Douglas Bachman, in Slavery in Another Name, describes how tens of thousands of African Americans were arbitrarily arrested during this period, many of them hit with court costs and fines which had to be worked off in order for them to be released. With no monies of their own to pay off debts, prisoners were sold as forced laborers to lumber camps, brickyards, railroads, farms, plantations, and dozens of incorporations throughout the South. Death rates were shockingly high, for the private contractors had no interest in the health and well-being of their laborers. Unlike the earlier slave owners who needed their slaves at a minimum to be healthy enough to survive hard labor, laborers were subject to almost continued lashings by long horsewhips, and those who collapsed due to injury or exhaustion were often left to die. Convicts had no meaningful legal rights at the time, and no effective redress. They were understood quite literally to be slaves of the state. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution had abolished slavery, but allowed one major exception. Slavery remained appropriate as punishment for a crime. In the landmark decision by the Virginia Supreme Court, Ruffian versus Commonwealth, issued at the height of the Southern Redemption, the court put to rest any notion that convicts were legally distinguishable from slaves. And I'm asking you, family, this reading from Michelle Alexander is talking about the period after the Civil War in which our black brothers and sisters from America were freed. So they are being told that they now have equal status in this country. They are now being told that they no longer have to be slaves at these plantations. But in reality, family, the government legalized ways to round them up and profit off of their labor. We have photographic evidence, we have historical evidence, and we literally are trying to report history in an authentic light in academic fields like ethnic studies. But I'm asking you, family, in reading about the past, Alexander at this time is talking about the Civil War, post-Civil War period, right? But how many of those same actions echo with today? How many of our prisoners are literally in for-profit corporation complexes that profit off of their labor? We have Americans who are literally thrown away into the criminal justice system and become indentured, or rather literal slaves to our capitalist system. They have no rights. And when they come home, do we embrace them with the idea of paying back, paying your dues, and now once again being a full member of society? Or do we brand them and literally set them up to fail? I'm trying to make a greater argument today, family. And I'm being convoluted about it because I'm really emotional. I went through the readings right before we went to service, and it hurt. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to address the reading we're about to see for the second reading. But what I want us to learn, family, is that our history matters today. The slaves being freed happened as a historical event, but do our lived experiences actually reflect that freedom? Or do we find new ways to construct chains? Our second reading today is an open letter from a colleague, an amazing department head and professional. And I'm asking you again to think about these problems of racism, of classism, of capitalism, of profiting off of modern day slave labor so that we can get cheap goods made in America. And I'm asking you, when you eat a potato next time, it literally comes from the prison industrial complex, family. We ourselves, although we are caught in a giant web, still benefit from the products of capitalism and modern day slavery. And I ask you, family, I believe that we can do better. Our second reading today, an open letter to the African American Studies community and our allies. April 28th, 2021. I write this open letter in the wake of Derek Chauvin's verdict. I intend to write last week, but I found I could not. For me, it was hard to celebrate the outcome as a victory. Victory would undo George Floyd's murder. It would mean that guilty verdicts in cases where cops kill unarmed people would be unexceptional. And yet, as telling and tragic as this fact may be, Chauvin's guilty verdict was a milestone, an occasion where massive public pressure, an aggressive prosecutor, and the breaking of the blue wall, and the self-footage shot by then 17-year-old Darnell Frazier combined to define Chauvin's action as cold-blooded murder. I did not write to you last week because it seemed wrong, even callous, to mention George Floyd and not Ma'Khia Bryant, who at 16 years old was gunned down by a police officer in Columbus, Ohio. Or Adam Toledo, a 13-year-old gunned down by Chicago police while raising his hands in surrender. Or Dante Wright, killed during the Chauvin trial when a police veteran allegedly mistook a gun for a taser. Or Andrew Brown Jr., killed by police in his own driveway with his hands on the steering wheel of his car. All of these murders happened this month, in April. April. I did not write to you because the same day that Chauvin's verdict was announced, my son's principal left a voicemail telling me that my 10-year-old was called the N-word by a classmate for winning a soccer game. This was upsetting, but not surprising. Being called the N-word is a rite of passage for Black people, so much so that my husband and I already prepared my son for it. While I sat there streaming the trial verdict, I was also deciding how best to discuss this with my boy. I was also composing in my head an email to the principal to ask how the SCASD reports and responses to hate speech, how the district addresses collective harm rather than punishing individual wrong. On Friday, just as I sat down to write again, I learned that the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial on Fraser Street had been vandalized by a white nationalist group. Somehow that event temporarily broke me. I am exhausted. And at that point, I decided to remain silent. Let others write their commentaries. I would sit back, hold my family close, and attend to the piles of something boring but necessary work that makes our department run. But then yesterday morning, I learned that an AFAM faculty member and her husband found a rope clumsily tied to into a shape of a noose on a tree right outside their house. It was a deliberate, disgusting, and cruel effort to intimidate and terrorize the only Black family on the block. It was designated to teach an all too familiar lesson. Step out of line and we will hurt, maim, or kill you. We, the noose said, can wield symbols of oppression with impunity. Forgive me, family. I'm finding this difficult to read because this is life. Reflecting on the work of this department has done to recruit faculty and students of color, it no longer seemed possible to remain silent. I felt I had to bear witness to affirm that African American studies will not be cowed, isolated, or shamed into remaining silent. The shame belongs to those who perpetuate, defend, or tolerate such acts. My job as an administrator, faculty member, activist, wife, and mother will never be to protect the reputation of this university or any other entity that speaks in the language of diversity, equity, and inclusion without doing the hard, painful work of creating a truly equitable, anti-racist, and sexist, anti-transphobic, pro-immigrant climate. My job is to bear witness to the fact that the Trump years have cost us dearly. They unleashed a kind of bigotry and violent nationalism that has always been present, but has been often coached into less incendiary terms. But make no mistake, the recent hateful acts here and around the country, the murder and brutalizing of Asian and Asian Americans, the hundreds of anti-trans bills making their way through state legislatures, the efforts to suppress Black voting rights are of a piece. They are a focused, if not coordinated, response to a perceived attack on white supremacy. The conviction of one white police officer and the election of a woman of Afro-Asian descent to the vice presidency has spurred on the anger and fear harbored by too many white people. Even if the Chauvin verdict feels like a very small step towards accountability and justice, it also feels like a turning point. It feels like a moment during which we have snatched victory out of the jaws of defeat. It feels like a moment to shed tears and to honor our ancestors' will to survive. It feels like a moment where we must once again reaffirm our commitments. We will always call out forms of individual and state-sanctioned violence whenever they appear. We will name them, resist them, and fight to eradicate them. We will teach, research, and write about the histories of struggles that have sustained generation and inspired freedom fighters towards the world, around the world. We will call out symbolic gestures that stand in for concrete, measurable, anti-racist outcomes. And in doing so, we will reassert that Black creativity, Black autonomy, and Black resiliency in the face of everyday, spectacular racism is both our birthright and our responsibility. In struggle, Cynthia A. Young, Department Head, African American Studies. I'm asking you, family, to reflect on her open letter and respond to her rallying cry for our help to do something now. I talk about in my academic videos about the privilege of lightness and the privilege of being a second-generation college graduate and my ability and privilege to pursue a Ph.D. And I fight every day to publish and to research, to talk about what's happening in our communities. I'm a superhero, and I'm asking you to step up in your role as a community member, as a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a voting person, someone who cares about our literal survival. I heard a battle cry, family. I heard a battle cry from our sister, and I'm asking you to answer it with me. Our ancestors witness our pain, our suffering, and our struggle, but they send us the light when we need it, and we will draw upon that light to shake this world. Join me, family. Join us in the everyday fight for all of our emancipation from the literal chains that capitalism and white supremacy hold us down with. And join me in redefining our humanity and joining our brothers and sisters and non-binary siblings around the world in their fights and their struggles. Because when we speak out for them, all of our voices are heard together. Go in peace, family. I love you. Nurture your minds, your bodies, and spirits because you are important. You are loved. And I will see you soon.